South Dakota's Republican Governor Kristi Noem is raising all sorts of questions with her prolific travel over the last 2 years. I'm joined now by Daniel Newhauser, freelance reporter whose investigation into Governor Noem's travel was published by Raw Story today, and Democratic State Senator Reid Nasiba of South Dakota. Thank you both for being here. Daniel, get us into these flight logs. Do they show? Do they sort of prove that Kristi Noem was using the state plane as like a personal aircraft, or is it vague? What are you seeing in those logs?
I wouldn't say that. It's certain that the aircraft was used to pick her up when she was living at a residence different from the governor's mansion, and also in one case picked her up from her daughter's wedding at a state park far on one corner of the state, to then go do business around the state and then come back. So it's not as if the plane was shuttling her back and forth to the Capitol or anything like that, but reasonable people can ask questions about how much extra it costs taxpayers for her to be living somewhere else. And then there's, of course, the things that you mentioned before, seeing the NRA, flying to talk Turning Point USA, speaking to a group of the Republican Jewish coalition with coincidentally some very big GOP donors in there. Again, reasonable people can ask questions about whether the state's needs were served by these trips.
And Representative Nasiba, isn't there a law in the state of South Dakota against the governor using the plane essentially as a personal aircraft?
Yes, there is, Joy, and thank you for having me on tonight. 15 years ago, so back in 2006, there was an initiated measure number 5 that said we want to limit the use of the state airplane to state business, because then Governor Rounds, now Senator Rounds, was using our state airplane for his own personal purposes and political purposes. When we put that before the people of South Dakota, they voted 55% to 45% in favor of limiting the use of the state airplane to state business.
And it's state senator. I always have to give people their honorific, so I apologize for that. So, but then to stay with you for just a moment, state senator, then why does it seem that legislatively Republicans have defeated attempts to put some more restrictions on, your governor's travel?
Well, I think that after that law passed back in 2006, I think then Governor Rounds was just more careful about using the state airplane, and Governor Dennis Dugard always wanted to keep himself beyond reproach, so he didn't use it for personal or political travel, as far as I know. But this governor uses the airplane a lot more and travels a lot more, and doesn't seem to be embarrassed by it at all.
And Mr. Newhauser, it does seem like it's more aggressive. If the governor presumably knows what the state law is, her office essentially just insists that all of these are for state business, that all of these trips are for state business. Is she filing some sort of reports to try to account for this travel?
Not that I know of. And maybe that's where, with respect to the state senator, the law might be a little deficient here. Who's to say what's state business and what's not? If she says that an NRA conference is state business because one of the first law actually that she signed into law was a concealed carry bill, and she's promoting the state's interests, then there's not really a venue that I know of to prove that otherwise. But again, I mean, it is indisputable that most of these questionable trips that I wrote about in my story were for right-wing organizations, Republican partisan organizations, and so again, if it's state business that is partisan in nature, well, then so be it. But again, you can ask questions about whether the state's needs are served by these trips.
And Senator Nasiba, is there, we're having this big debate about whether the former president needs to be held accountable by the law, if indeed he broke the law. Could we be seeing the same kind of questions begin to be asked in the state of South Dakota about the governor?
Right. I think we could. And there's at least a couple of bills that are still alive in the state Senate. One is a bill that would basically require quarterly reporting about the use of our state airplane. And that would be a report that would come back to the Appropriations Committee. So there would at least be some legislative oversight. I mean, that's what a legislature is supposed to do. We're supposed to be a check and balance on the executive branch, but that hasn't been happening. And then there's a second bill that I have coming up on Wednesday that even when the governor does travel, and I think she should always have security with her, but I do think we should know what it costs. If the taxpayers are paying for her to be campaigning in Maine or in Georgia, I think the taxpayers should find out what it's been costing us to provide security for our governor.
Do you, well, I'll start with you on this, Daniel Newhauser. Do you have any reporting that some of this travel is related to maybe her preparing for a presidential run? Do you think she's doing this to prepare herself to run for president?
I think it would be too far to say that for certain. But what I will say is this is not an uncommon situation, especially for governors. You know, it's a high-profile position. There's a natural tension between maybe a state wanting to be a little bit more guardful and mindful about how money is spent, and somebody looking to raise his or her profile. We've seen these same kind of stories about many, many governors of both parties, California, New York, Oklahoma, and I think it's always worthy of at least asking the question, especially if, and I don't know that there's going to be the case here, that she wants to seek higher, but if she does, how exactly are they spending time in their current office?
Daniel Newhauser and State Senator Reynold Nasiba, thank you both for being here. That's tonight's ReidOut. All In with Chris A starts now.